Homecoming.
To share this wealth of information. In these pages, there's so much revelation. These are words to remind you of your purpose. There's power in the life of books. The life of books.
Welcome. Happy Saturday. Welcome from the Life of Books online book club. We are so excited to be with you today. Yes. It is a happy Saturday. Let me tell you something. Within the next 30 minutes, you can get so much vibrancy and energy and excitement. We probably got to warm up just a little bit. It's already warm. They don't understand. We welcome you if you're joining us on WLV at listenvision.com. Welcome. If you're joining us on A Woman's Voice social media pages, thank you. We welcome you today. If you're joining via Periscope, welcome. Please share this with your social media audience. Today is going to be a day of liberation and transformation. We have chosen such a great book to share, and I believe there's so many answers that we hold today. And once we speak, I think it'll be life for somebody else. So again, share with your social media audience. I promise you it will be worth the next 2 hours of your time to join us this morning. Again, welcome on behalf of the Life of Books crew. I'm going to do a quick introduction before we get started. Right here to my right, we are going to start with Charmonique. She is the executive producer extraordinaire. Thank you. Yeah. We love her. Marcy Thompson, a.k.a. she's married to Otis. This is how we define her. She's married to Otis. This is it. That's my boo. Yes. We have Tashia. She is our radio MC extraordinaire.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
We have Dee, who is our elder, our intercessor. She's just like a grandmother before her time, and she's lighthearted like a teenager. I mean, she has so much energy and wisdom. We welcome her to the table. Yes. We have Mika, who's soon to be a.k.a. Churchill's wife. Yes. She is wife in training. I think she's even finished all of her marriage counseling sessions. I'm finished, girl. Yes. Next to me, we have Shalonda, professor, worship leader, wordsmith. Yes. And myself, Dr. Nakia Wright. Thank you for joining us. Yes. AKA, I'm married to the one, the only, the infamous Bishop Donald Wright. Boom. Thank you for joining us. We have had such a wonderful journey. When I thought about the life of books this morning, I realized we have only 3 more months of this year to come before you to share the sentiments of our heart. And the Life of Books is an online book club. Every month we choose a book to discuss. I say this often. We are talking to ourselves, we're talking amongst ourselves, sitting around a fireplace with a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, eating cookies, and letting you listen. We allow you into the intimate places of our heart in order to hope that we are being an answer in the earth. That's our only objective. We're not looking for success. We're not looking for the limelight. We're looking to be answers. We're saying, God, if you can use anybody, use us.
Yes, now.
So I'm grateful for every yes at this table. We are discussing Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, today. I am truly excited. She has to be one of my top favorite authors. I believe it's because of her transparency and her willingness to share. A lot of times people share based off of stuff that they've read, but they're not willing to be vulnerable enough and transparent enough to share the intimacy of their secret walks in life, their quiet struggles, their loud celebrations, and she shares it all. She has a special place in my heart, and I bless God for her. She's so great. Before we dive into this book, I just want to give a few mark your calendar moments. On September the 8th, mark your calendars. Plan to join myself and the Life of Books crew. Yes! For the book launch of Inspired by Love. This was a literary work derived from the heart of Pastor Don M. Harvey. Myself and Elder D are contributors in the book. It is so wonderful. My chapter is called The Right Kind of Love. And I typically talk about, my writing is based on life getting married at the age of 38. Most of you know that when we're marrying at ages where, no offense to anyone listening, no one's hardly a virgin anymore. And many people have come to covenant with a past and experiences and, set in their ways selves. And I just share my journey of being married at 38, bringing 2 kids into a relationship, and how you merge lives. I believe that it's a great work, not because I wrote it, just because I believe it's what God placed on my heart to share. Elder D wrote about You Are Enough, and she talks about just building up the life of single and whole. Most people feel like they're not whole if they're not whole because they're single. You are just that. And if you are not, she gives you answers to be exactly what you need to be. So when your mate comes to sweep you up off of your feet, they're not getting a half of you. They're getting all of who you are. So please, September the 8th. Yes. September the 8th. Follow us on A Woman's Voice AWV Empowers if you're not already. And register for that day. I promise you, the registration fee includes the book. You're getting so much that day. You are going to be like, oh my goodness, you're going to leave a seed when you leave. That's how much it's going to impact and bless your life. And for the month of September, we're actually doing that book, Inspired by Love. So go to the event, get your book, read about it, and then join us on September 29th to discuss it. It's going to be a phenomenal month, the month of September. I'm excited. Ladies, do you have anything that you want to share before we get started? We'll start with you, Charmy.
No, not at this time.
I threw a little curveball in there. Yes.
No, not at this time. Up a little bit.
Marcy.
Oh, good.
Tashia.
No, not a shareable moment right now.
I promise you, these are busy ladies. I don't know. They've done so many great things. D?
No, ma'am.
What? Tamika?
I'm ready to dive in.
You ready to dive in? Shalonda?
I do have something to
Yes!
share. We're going to have worship tomorrow at the gathering.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the address to the location?
7001 Belch Drive. That's BELTZ Drive, Forestville, Maryland.
And we're starting at
747.
10 a.m.
9:55.
9:55.
Be in your seat at 9:50.
9:50.
Yes, I love it. We welcome you to join us for worship tomorrow. We are a little biased, but we choose to believe that we have the greatest pastor
Yes, we
on
do.
the earth. So
Hands
please
down.
join us. And for you all that's joining us for the very first time, we do a couple of things throughout the day. You'll see us ring a bell, and that means that someone says something worth making a noise and celebrating. And so this is our way of saying, yes, that was good. And I don't know if anyone...
What does it mean again?
Yes, that was good. So you'll see us do that. And then, I don't know, but I typically try to sow seed when somebody says something phenomenal. So you'll see me handing money to sow seed. That's me touching and agreeing with their success, and I'm applying it to my own life. So those are some of the things that we do. I know. Let me tell you something.
Oh, let me
You did see $5, and that's because
Say something really good.
when I opened my wallet, I was looking for ones, and I didn't have any, so I had to grab some fives.
Ain't God good? I'm about to work for this one. I'm about to work for this one.
Brene Brown myself.
Get my points together.
You got my...
All right, ladies, we're going to start today with just an overall of what you thought about Braving the Wilderness. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you. We are the Life of Books, the #1 online book club. Thank you for joining us. If you have not done so already, please share this with your social media audience. We welcome them to join us. And with that being said, Charmy, tell me what you thought about the overall book.
Overall, so Brene Brown is actually one of my favorites too, because just like you said, she's a very transparent, like to the point where you're like, ooh, you probably almost shouldn't have shared that. But I love that she does, and the way she ties in her research with her experiences makes her work something that I feel like I can connect with. So I really enjoyed this book, from how to belong to you.
That's good.
Like, it's one thing to feel like, I need to be a part of so many different things to find my identity. But when you're safe enough with you and your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own insecurities, your own victories, to be secure in you and to stand alone, like, that is a tremendous feat that I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily find until later. But with this book, you can find it wherever you are now. You know what I mean? So I really enjoyed the book.
That's good, Marcy.
So of course, I'm a fan of Brene Brown. She is a thorough researcher, a masterful storyteller, and I appreciate that. I like many things about the book. So, of course, the research, it's not fluff. She has data to back up everything she's saying. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate her calling names. Like, she goes for the jugular in here. She doesn't hold back. And, I'm reading. I'm like, okay, she's like my aunt in my head. Like, okay, you better get him. So you get him. You better tell him. I mean, so it's like I can see so many elements of me in various parts of the book. I also like that she gives us definitions and a common language to use. So she gives us words. She puts words to emotion. And I love that about the book, because it brings validity to your feelings, your emotions, and it just gives you a way to articulate where you are, whether you belong or you don't. I mean, it just gives you the words to use. So I appreciated the work.
Amen.
Overall, I thought the book was very intriguing. It was a clear reminder that there is solutions for identity crisis, for a sense of belonging, and she just puts a clear definition to vulnerability and where owning who you are and where you are. So it's a great read.
That's good.
I absolutely love everything by Dr. Brown. I have nicknamed her the Doctor of Emotions and Connection. Lady Wright often says that we are modeling the way. She truly models the way for living boldly, vulnerably.
Yes, that's good.
And I absolutely love the read.
That's good. Tamika?
For me, in processing the work, I think I appreciate how Dr. Brown delineates between developing community and true belonging. How there is a difference, and you need to recognize the difference. I appreciate that it's a timely work, that it's an answer to the crisis that we are in right now, and it's not just a self-help work. It's an organizational answer. It's a political answer. It's an answer in a variety of ways, and so I found pleasure in reading the book. I loved her narratives, and I love the research. So it was a great blend.
Yes. Shalonda?
I would have to agree with the ladies about the research from a science background. That speaks to me a lot, and you can tell she really did her homework. I love how she is a woman of one-liners. Like my whole book is highlighted. You just be like, you know what I mean? Like she's the queen of one-liners, and I like how she gives you tools and resources to becoming who you are as a person and embracing who you really are as a person. I love how she breaks down the difference of belonging versus fitting in. You know what I mean? That was the main takeaway. And embracing that alone time, because in that moment you're all one. That's who you are to self, and you have to be authentic no matter what. So I love that about the work, and also the sense of connection that we must have, because that connection is dependent upon your specific survival. So those were my takeaways from the book.
I mean, each one of the ladies took pretty much every word that I could possibly say. They summed it up so well. In the times of your life where you need you the most, sometimes we shy away and we don't come, the best of us does not come forward. Braving the wilderness teaches you during the most difficult times of your life how to stand out, how to ask the right questions, and how to get the appropriate answers for the right questions in the crisis of your lives. And oftentimes we mistake success for having it all together and having all of the questions and knowing all of the answers. And she shows you that with every level of success, there's more questions and more answers that's needed. And no matter how old you are, you research, you dive in, and you find out who you truly are. The basis of this book is true belonging, and she just masterfully puts all of it together. She helps you identify with your past, your present, and your future. And I just love her. I love her research. I love, like each one of you said, her vulnerability. And I love the fact that she's such a risk taker. Because in order to be great, you have to take risk. And she's willing to take them. And she's willing to take them for, if you don't want to go, you're coming along for the journey anyway. So you have to be prepared for success. And I love the people around her because they don't drop by the wayside. They level up so that they can go with her. And I appreciate that about Brene. I mean, she's brilliant, and she strategically, intentionally picked the people that's closest to her. And when you read the book, you see that she did it for a reason. And the greatest thing that I read throughout the book is they answered the call. So it was a great read for me. So good. If you're just joining us, again, I welcome you to the Life of Books online book club. The book that we're currently discussing is Braving the Wilderness. And if you haven't been with us before, typically what we do is we do an overall of what your thoughts and sentiments are about the book. And then we dive into the pages and we discuss some things that stood out to us and we would like to share. We conclude the 2-hour segment by doing a conclusion of A, the book, and B, our time together. So again, I thank you for joining us. Please, again, share with your social media audience. I promise you will not be disappointed. Mika, let's start with you. We're going to start at the very beginning. Find the little points that stood out to you. I mean, every page, it just basically screams something.
Yes. I think my area is going to be page 13. We're going to start early. She really goes through, lets us get an idea of who she is, why she does the things that she does. But at the bottom of page 13, she just says, we all experience moments that, when left unspoken and unresolved, send us searching desperately for belonging and settling for fitting in. And it resonated with me just because I think Shalonda mentioned it earlier. We have to find a place where we belong, but we confuse belonging for fitting in, and we compromise and become like those that we are around. And therein lies the beginning of the crisis that she is going to identify in our book.
That's good. One of the things that she said that was a common denominator throughout the entire book is she references a poem from Dr. Maya Angelou. Was it a poem or a quote? And I'll say this because you'll hear it resonated throughout all of our thoughts. And the quote reads, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great." And since I started reading this book, that quote has been the sentiments of my heart. The price is high, the reward is great. And there's no but. The price is high, period. The reward is great. I think that's so phenomenal. It's so good. Marcy?
So on the same page, page 5, I highlighted quite a few things, but something that stood out above that, and it was with a conversation with Oprah, and it says, "Do not think you can be brave with your life and your work and never disappoint anyone. It doesn't work that way."
So good.
And again, we're all saying it, and it's the theme of the book, but being you, being unique, I mean, you're going to upset some people. And, you know, I appreciate her stories about bravery. She talked about how she gave up speaking engagements because they tried to box her in with wearing certain clothes or not saying the word pissed off or just not being who she is. And, you know, I appreciate the model and the example.
I love that quote. I actually highlighted it myself because I thought about ministry as a whole, and oftentimes in ministry leadership positions, people don't give you the space to have a bad day. If they're having a bad day and they call you, they expect you to be there. They expect you to be present. And if you're not there and if you're not present, they take it personally because they forget that leaders are human. And they don't give leadership space to have an off day or a bad day because we're so self-absorbed and self-consumed with our own emotions and our own life that I appreciated this because in your walk of leadership, you will disappoint because life happens. And it is my hope and my desire that the people that we minister to in the gathering at Forestville, that leadership has equipped you enough to handle difficult moments. So self-induced disappointment is not what leads and guides you, that you have within you to be your own answer if you tap into you. So I thought that was good. Charmy?
So here's the thing. I highlighted so much in my book
That I don't have today.
that I do not have. And so I'm looking at Hattie's book and I'm like, where was that? Where was that? But nevertheless, we continue.
Nevertheless.
I'll say this. So when she was telling the story about how she went on Oprah's show, and they just hit it off, and it was a great moment. And then she went backstage, and Dr. Maya Angelou was there, and she talks about how Dr. Angelou imparted into her in that moment to continue, to keep going, to don't stop here. Like I felt like I wonder what that moment felt like to have one of the persons that you admired the most, to give you a little bit of strength to continue to be you. Because I feel like there are many people not many people, there are some people that I am inspired by. And one of them is obviously Bishop Wright. And so every week, he comes and he inspires us and pushes us to continue, to be strong, to fight the good fight of faith, to please God in everything that we can do. And so for me, that story just kind of reminded me to be you, be strong, continue. Like, it was just a little reminder of, how important moments are.
That's good.
You know what I mean? So
You live that moment every day that you're in my presence, though, Shami. Right?
I do. I do every single moment. I wish I had $1 to give you right now.
Hello, Shalonda.
I was trying to find it, what Shami was talking about, so I can tell you the page. Is it 21? And the quote that she tells her? It's on, Shami's talking about page 21 and 22. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna help you be great on today.
And we can't, and one of the things I noted about that point, Charmy, is that we can't undermine the process she had to go through alone before getting to that moment. How she could have turned back, how she could have not showed up, right? Because she had to give, in her hotel room, she had to write herself permission slip
So good.
to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Permission slips to, go ahead, Charmy.
No, continue.
Permission to show up, and that's on page 20.
Yes.
She says, I need a permission slip to stop being so serious and afraid.
Yes.
I need permission to have fun today. Permission to be excited and goofy and to have fun. She had to set her intention, and then she had to follow through.
Yes, because she said this that was so good that most of us do. She said, don't study this moment, be in it. Be present in the moment. That was so good. And she said, I'm doing that thing I do when I'm afraid. I'm floating above my life, watching it and studying it rather than living it. That was so good. And you don't maximize the moments when you don't live in them. Oh, it's so good. Hashtag live in the moment. Come on, y'all. That's the hashtag for the day. Live in the moment. And some things does not require a picture. Some things is strong enough that memory should soak in so you can live in the moment and memorize it and maybe journal about it. But some things you literally have to soak it up.
Yeah, because back to what you're saying is that fear will cause you not to face your reality. And as long as you're walking in fear and you're not facing your reality, you're letting life pass by, and you look up sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later and you're still in the same place. And you never moved.
Yes.
Because you were afraid to take that next step.
Yes. And your life has so much to show for it. However, because you didn't represent at the time, you didn't maximize the moment.
Right. And that's why when she went back and said, set the intention, like, what am I in this moment to do or to be, or, you know what I mean? And then follow through with that. Follow through with everything that you set yourself to do.
Follow through. Yes. So good. Shalonda.
Yes. So on page 14, she's talking about the context of suffering and things that break in you. And then she goes and says, poverty, violence, human rights violations, not belonging in our families is still one of the most dangerous hurts. That's because it has the power to break our heart, our spirit, and our sense of self-worth. It broke all three for me.
Come on.
And when those things break, there are only 3 outcomes. Sometimes I've borne witness to in my life and in my work. And she gives these 3 outcomes. She said, number 1, you live in constant pain and seek relief by numbing it and or inflicting it on others. Number 2, you deny your pain, and your denial ensures that your past is on to those that you pass it on to those around you and down to your children. And number 3, you find the courage to own the pain and develop a level of empathy and compassion for yourself and others that allows you to spot the hurt in the world in a unique way. I certainly tried the first 2, and I know we all have. Only through sheer grace did I make my way to the 3rd. That was so powerful to me because you have to learn how to take the pain and maximize on it. Pain is one of the greatest investments because you get the greatest return.
Word. Pain as an investment, ma'am.
You get the greatest return on that
I'll
pain
cash app
because
Because
it teaches you strength, it teaches you power,
it does.
it teaches you vulnerability, it teaches you how to get up from where you are, it teaches you how to make the next step. And she says one thing that was so important to me. She said, that we don't know how to sit in others' pain.
That's
you know,
true.
and when she said it, it was like, wow. It's almost like you walk this way, you've been here before, help somebody else out. When you see them in pain, sit in that with them, because your survival is dependent on their survival. If they don't make it, you don't win. And that goes back to that sense of community that she was talking about, being connected to each other so intricately and in detail like that. So
That's good.
I love it.
And that's what I felt like a woman's voice is. I said, you know what hurt looks like. You know what you needed when you needed it. Live to be an answer. Live so that no one else has to. Yes, they have to feel the pain in order to become. Because pain produces. However, their recovery process doesn't have to break them. So I feel like a woman's voice does that.
I agree wholeheartedly, and it just makes me think about the word being a companion in tribulation. You know, we want to be companions in celebration, but we forget being companions in tribulation and walking with people. And you know, we know what it takes to recover, and the work. And look, you can't skip steps. And sometimes you need somebody in it with you. And so I agree. I agree that a woman's voice is that answer. And I mean, but yes.
Yeah.
We forget that.
Connections are necessary for success. No one makes it. It's impossible to be a success alone.
That's it. True.
And one of the things she said is when she said find the courage to own the pain, don't just recognize it.
Yes.
You have to own it.
That's good.
Because you can recognize the pain and still live with it every day and still be compassionate to others because you recognize it. But if you don't own, exactly. But if you don't own it, take some accountability, responsibility, whatever it is you need to do to say, this is my truth now and I can change it.
Yeah. On page 15, she says, sometimes the most dangerous thing for kids is the silence that allows them to construct their own stories. And let me tell you, that's so good. This is why I often say, matriarchs, will you rise up? Because most of the matriarchs who hold our answers are silent because life has silenced them. And if you don't show the way, we'll construct our own stories. And they overcame by the words of their testimonies. You are shut up because you won't open your mouth. All it takes is your voice that matters to speak your truth, and you will get to a place that you never imagined you would be. It's Bible. It has to come to pass. Yes.
That's the word.
Woo.
And back to back to what Shauna was saying about how she said you have to own your pain. That's on page 66.
Come on.
She said pain will only subside. Pain will subside only when we acknowledge it and care for it.
Care for it.
Yes, and care for it.
No, stop. Start with pain is unrelenting.
Okay, I'll go back.
Oh, yes, I highlighted
What number?
66. I know.
On page 66. She says pain is unrelenting. It will get our attention. Despite our attempts to drown it out in addiction, to physically beat it out of one another, to suffocate it with success and material trappings, or to strangle it with our hate, pain will find a way to make itself known.
It will find a way.
Find a way. Pain will subside only when we acknowledge it and care for it. Addressing it with love and compassion would take only a minuscule percentage of the energy it takes to fight it. But approaching pain head on is terrifying.
Keep on going.
Keep going. Most of us were not taught how to recognize pain, name it, and be with it. Be with it. Our families and culture believe that the vulnerability that it takes to acknowledge pain was weakness. So we are taught anger, rage, and denial instead. But what we know now is that when we deny our emotion, it owns us. When we own our emotions, we can rebuild and find a way through the pain. And that right there sums up everything, because she says pain must be addressed. And one of the things about coming from like a medical background is when you have pain and you don't address that acute small illness becomes a chronic illness. And one of the signs of chronic illness is that healing will never occur. And so your body is always in a state of inflammation. So it's important to deal with the whys on a small scale, because if you don't address it, it becomes a bigger problem. And that problem, once it's exacerbated, you can't heal it, and you have to live with that debilitating effects. It's always a side effects to chronic pain. You know what I
Always
mean?
side effects.
So
Ooh, the side effects of living with pain.
yeah,
Oh my.
And the side effects are always worse than the pain itself.
Yeah.
But just address it.
yeah.
Marcy, did you make a point? Shalon, Tashia? So
Well,
good.
We went all around my point. My point was with the
We jumped all through the book.
yeah. Oh yeah.
We
Wait
went
a
from
minute.
one page to
My
66.
point was the one about adopting the concept of giving yourself permission and writing yourself a permission slip, and that was one of the points that we had already talked about. Give yourself permission to be you, be silly, be daring, be great. Just writing yourself a permission slip, adopting that concept.
That's good. D?
I like that she started the foundation of the book of where it all starts for most of us at home. And most of us are not given the tool chest of how to identify the source of the pain. We sit in the actual pain, but we don't do the legwork or the work of where did it all start. And she gave us the tools by sharing her own story and identifying that her parents were doing the best they knew, and identifying the gap of how it shows up because of her not having that tool chest in her moments of life. And she was able to trace back and say, this is how I respond as a result of that, and here's how I address it. So.
I think one of the greatest lessons I learned early on, and it came at a very painful time in my life. When we were growing up, my family is we are a big family, and every weekend we get together, and on the holidays it was the same story. And during the holidays, my grandparents are great. However, my family, I won't say they had favorites. So during the holidays, me, my sisters, and my brothers, and my cousins, you guys see me with them, Connor, Alyssa. We were the only ones out of all of the grandkids that did not get presents at Christmas time, and it was torture for me to sit and watch all of my younger cousins get presents, and then us on this side not get presents. It was a very painful time for me. And I remember my mom stepping up at that time, and she was so great. And she would say, I got your presents at home. Don't worry. When you get home, you'll have presents. Every year I had to build myself up for that moment, because every year I knew it was going to be the same thing, until I learned to start celebrating them opening their presents. And it was a great learning experience for me, because I said, I refuse to be hurt over this, because my presents are better at home. I talked myself through the moment. And I structured my growing up through those moments. I refused to be that hurt by something that someone else did to me. So that's where my confidence level came in. I learned it early, because the pain was so great. I was like, I don't ever want to feel like this again. And it took me years at a young age to learn how to celebrate somebody else. I believe that's why I can do it so authentic now, because I learned at an early age.
You said something good too. You said your mama.
Yes,
identified
she did.
Thought for you.
Necessary.
And so many households is lacking that beginning aspect where you have an advocate who that works.
So good.
Often our advocates show up later in life and have to pick up the baggage of what was failed to be
So
addressed when we were younger. So when people admire the boldness and the passion, they don't realize that it came from a fighting spirit from youth that either came through pain or because it was taught.
Yes, very good.
And it's a prime example of what we were just saying before. Your mom silenced the thing that you were about to construct in your own mind.
Absolutely.
As if it was something that you had done or that they hadn't done, but your mom silenced that voice.
Mom,
So-
you see how great you are, Mom? You see this?
Right.
Mom, man, you are great. Mommies matter.
And you gave yourself permission.
But you know, it's funny. She said something in, I think it's the first page, where she memorizes quotes and she studied people who have mastered doing things well.
Yes.
And I actually exercise that principle. When I see the thing that I believe I'm lacking or inept in, I study and replay and recap until I change the dialogue mentally that you need to shift concerning how you respond to this or how you show up in fear and crisis. this is how I respond to shut it down.
Yep. Look, I put this. She said, "I'm a seeker of pattern and connection." I said, "Oh, that's Elder D."
That's
My notes. Marcy.
No, I was just going to say that on page 15, what you described is written here. And she says, perspective is a function of experience. And, you know, your experience has enlightened your perspective. And so it makes it easy to love because you know what you felt. You don't want people to feel that way. So, you know, that has enlightened your experience. But what she says was she talked about her and she says she didn't have the experience to put what was happening around her in context. And I think so much of sometimes we don't know how to put our trauma in context. You know what I mean? Because it's so big, you know, and it's illuminated. Like in pain, you know, sometimes it could be just like a little something and then you know, that one little thing, like if your toe hurts, it makes your whole body hurt, right? But it's so, look, just take your shoes off. Give yourself the relief, right? But it's just these one little actions. But your example was, I mean, you know, in the book. So I just wanted to bring that out.
And just like Marcy saying how she said your toe hurt, take your shoes off, how she talks about it in the book, you want to put leather all over everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To cover it up. You don't got to do that. All you have to do is change your mind and the way you perceive what
We
things to be.
self-medicate, right? We self-medicate in so many ways, whether it's, you know, alcohol, drugs, shopping, success. You know, she called that thing out. It's like you're ignoring your reality by these material things or accolades in other areas. No, you at the end of the day, you have to live with you.
Yes,
and you know, so.
Not only do you have to live with you, you oftentimes are living with what your parents didn't heal. You've inherited the generational hurt or the non-belonging that your father didn't know how to identify in Tonight We Wrestle. Bishop so eloquently talks about that issue with Jacob, who struggled with his own identity, but that identity crisis came from Abraham, his grandfather, right? And he had to grow up underneath 3 generations, right, of this hurt and pain and non-belonging inflicted within the family that he has to then break the curse from. And I think it just lives, I think it's important for us to recognize how critical it is as parents, as mentors, as leaders, to protect childhood. Control the narrative that children grow up with. Help them to see life through the different perspectives because they genuinely do not have the capacity to see differently unless that sight is constructed, right? Their experiences from home are one thing, but I have the ability in the classroom to control and give another set of experiences to say, no, love looks like this, feels like this, your worth is this, right? And I can offer them a different perspective and every opportunity. Church is another way. And so it would help if every place was saying the same thing, but the spiritual crisis being identified right now is that nowhere is telling us who we really are. And so we are confused, right? And we are medicating and we're distracted and we're paying attention to the noise, not really connecting or committing to who it is we are meant to be, and that my identity is unique. I don't have to be a duplicate. I'm not a mass production, right?
That's it. Yes. And the one thing that I appreciate about our leadership that we have is Bishop, whether we choose to or not, Bishop always teaches us how to make home the safe place. Home should always be your source of reconnection. So it's very important that you create an environment at home where you pray, you laugh, you engage. And I mean, I've been talking about this all week. It's necessary that you have balance. True belonging requires a multitude of life to be present. And you never know, being distracted prevents you from being present at the right times. And you don't always see, we all have a gift of discernment. But if you choose not to tap into it because you're distracted, then there's legacies attached to yourself, to your yes. And you said it earlier. If we don't become, if we don't evolve, if we don't own who we are, there will be a legacy that's behind us that won't get to a place that they're supposed to be. I mean, showing up is necessary. On page 17, she says something. She says, never underestimate the power of being seen. It's exhausting to keep working against yourself. When someone truly sees you and loves you, some days his love felt like a gift. And she was referring to her husband. And I love this so much because we forget that we could be our biggest enemies. The only thing standing in between us and owning who we are is a choice and a desire. So if you choose you, then you work on the better of you. And oftentimes we try to hide the weaknesses and the ugly parts of us, but you have to expose them in order to address them. And I love it because she reminds you that you have people around you that want to love you. But if you don't accept their love, if you don't reach out for them, then you are missing out on one of the greatest emotions ever placed in the earth. And she says, some days his love felt like a gift. After I read this, I literally wrote my husband a note very similar to this because his love feels like a gift. The present is we look at it as past, present, and future, and we don't look at the word present as what it is. A present is a gift. The day that we're living in every day, the present is a gift. And if you treated every day as the gift that it was, you would move about it so differently.
That's good. That's so true.
I love it. It was good. Yes. Shalonda.
Yes. Where do we go from this point? It's so much in here. It's so good.
So good.
So back to try to, she goes on to talk about from her point when she talks from Maya Angelou. She goes on to try to sum up how she started to get what Maya Angelou was saying in the beginning with the quote. So after her meeting with her, she said how Maya held her hand even tighter, and she said, "Do not be moved, Brene." You know. And then on page 23, she says, "You learn how to plant your feet. Is what you do. You bend and scratch and grow, but you commit to not moving from who you particularly are." And then she goes on to talk about how she was talking to her husband about how she hasn't found anyone that looks like her, that does what she does, that talks like she does. And she goes on to say on page 26, "You're kind of weird, an outlier in a lot of ways." And then I'll read the whole thing. She said, "But here's the thing. There were more than 20 speakers at this big leadership conference, and you were the highest rated speaker in your jeans and clogs. Given that, how do you figure that anyone belongs there more than you? You will always belong anywhere you show up as yourself and talk about yourself and your work in a real way." And that was it. That was the moment. She realized that in that moment, you had to be who you really are. And on the next page, on page 27, she says, "It's okay if I'm alone in this. That's not what I believe is best for this child, period." Talking about her husband, how he had to make a decision that I'm not moved by those around me. You know what I mean? I'm not moved by it. I'll stand true to who I am. And one of the things that she goes on now, summing up in this last line, she said, "My wheels started turning faster. I explained to Steve that while I felt like I now understood the vulnerability and courage of standing on your own, I still couldn't shake the underlying feeling of wanting to be a part of something that I wanted." And she said she wanted a squad. But she goes on to go back and quote at the end of the chapter on page 28 how she returns back to what Maya was saying to her. And she goes, Maya Angelou's last point was, more and more, I belong to myself. I'm very proud of that. I'm very concerned about how I look at Maya. I like Maya very much. I like the humor and courage very much. And when I find myself acting in a way that that doesn't please me, then I have to deal with that. She goes on to say, "I looked up from the reading and exchange and thought, Maya belongs to Maya. I belong to self. I get it. I don't quite have it completely, but at least I'm getting it."
Yes.
And she goes on to say at that time, that's when she started to bring in the theory of true belonging. And I like how she shows the steps of how she went from I don't know who I am, and using examples of her husband. trying to go back to show her you have to still be who you are no matter what, and how she brings back the quote from Maya saying that Maya looks at Maya and how she has to look at herself, and then she begins to understand that you belong only to yourself. And once you really get that, that's where you truly get that sense of true belonging.
Own yourself.
Own
Be
yourself.
true to you. Yeah. Marcy.
So I'll jump to page 32. Perfect segue. True belonging, and she defines it. True belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance.
Yes.
I'll jump down. Being ourselves means sometimes having to find the courage to stand alone, totally alone. Jump down again. Belonging to ourselves means being called to stand alone, to brave the wilderness of uncertainty, vulnerability, and criticism. And I just thought that, this is where she starts to introduce that the word uncertainty, and, you have to just lose the control. It's just, listen, the wilderness, and she describes wilderness later, but, it's about control. Releasing pain, I think sometimes we hold on to pain because we've grown to understand it. Or I don't know what my life is going to look like without this trauma. We've just allowed it to define. There are moments of pain. It's our crutch, and it's attention getting. There's no. You might feel the pain in your, solely you feel the pain, but people start to identify you with your pain. Oh, well, I know that this is, and so then people start to not expect anything from you. And no, I expect greatness from you always. And I want people to, I don't want to be around people who just let me lay down, So, anyway, that was a great point. And
another point on that page was true belonging. It became clear that it's not something we achieve or accomplish with others. It's something we carry in our heart.
Yeah.
It's a matter of the heart.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah, it is.
That's
Yeah,
good.
it is.
Charmy.
Okay. So on page 36. Well, give me 1 second. All right. So yeah, on page 36 at the top, the very first thing she said, people are hard to hate close up.
Yes.
Move in.
Move in.
Move in.
That was my favorite.
That was one of my favorite things. Move in. Like, because so often, and she talks about this. She talks about how we look at groups of people, whether by race, gender, whatever. We look at groups of people and we define them either by what society says or based on sometimes one experience that you might have had with just one individual that didn't understand you, get you, whatever, or based on what your family has already kind of put in you, meaning there are some stereotypes that come because that's what my daddy used to always say. Like my dad, personal. So my dad is very, he's the type of guy when he says something, he doesn't always think about it. He doesn't care how it makes you feel. He don't care if it's racist. He don't care if it hurts you. He just doesn't care. He will just say whatever he wants to say because he feels like as an elder that he has the right to say something because he's been here so long. Okay, so I'm saying that to say that, so there have been times in my life where I remember early on reflecting that on people because he used to say things all the time. But then back full circle, move in. I realized, that person ain't like that just because my dad used to say that these people was this kind of way. Because I moved in, I became personal. I learned how to open up to the differences around me. You know what I mean? So I love that she said that people are hard to hate close up.
Move in.
Move in.
That was so good.
I think that was like one of the best chapters.
my favorite.
And
That
because
was my favorite chapter.
One of my favorite chapters.
because she goes into like how we make those stereotypes based upon what our parents told us, like Democrats are all this and Republicans are all this. And she goes, well, is that person a loser, the one that took you after your husband had a heart attack and drove you to the hospital, all of that, and helped you plan the funeral and all of that? He was like, right.
And she was a Democrat.
Right. And she was a Democrat. You know, like the things that the stereotypes that we have about people, but that's not who they really are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And she said the most fulfilled people live zoomed in.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so good. I know we'll get to that point, but yeah, I thought that was
That's good.
my favorite.
Tashia.
My point is on 36 as well. What I really liked about the book was how she really spoke to me. I read it metaphorically, and how she termed the word wilderness, and how you have to identify with just where it is, or what your wilderness is. And so just making a difference to choose and opting to be yourself, of course. As a clear picture of true belonging emerged from the data, I realized why we must sometimes stand alone in our decisions and belief despite our fear of criticism and rejection. The first image that came to me was the wilderness.
That's good. That's good. If you're just joining in, we welcome you. We are the Life of Books crew. We are an online book club. We thank you for joining us. We are reading this month Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. And we're diving into these pages because there's so much work and so much worth in these books. I hope that you are enjoying it. Do we have any comments or questions thus far, Hattie? We have Hadassah behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Yes, Patty.
Hopefully you can hear everything that we're saying. If not, please let us know. There's somebody behind it. We have DJ DZ in the studio. DZ. Making sure everything runs right. And shout out to Jeremy, who's the owner and executive, everything of WLVS Listen Vision. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. And shout out for Dr. Renee Allen. If it were not for her and her introducing us to this dynamic team, and always pushing me out of my comfort zone so that she said you are surrounded by loud voices that have something to offer the earth. Let the world hear what you hear every single day. So shout out to Dr. Renee Allen. She has her own radio show right here on WLVS on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock p.m. And let me tell you, she has the DMV finest in here every week. So make sure that you tune in. Yes, Mika, come on, keep us going.
So you guys we just finished talking about like the elements of true belonging. Move in. People are hard to hate close up. But one of the things that she identifies is what you have to do in order to find true belonging is brave the wilderness. And so at the bottom of page 36, she simply defines wilderness, which was so important because we all come to the table with a different mindset of what wilderness actually is. And so before I read her definition, I tried to think of what she might say. I wasn't close. I wasn't close. But, I challenged myself that way. But just before, she says, what all wilderness metaphors have in common are the notions of solitude, vulnerability, and an emotional, spiritual, or physical quest.
Yes.
And I loved the fact that included emotional and spiritual, not just a physical quest.
Yes.
The characteristics, solitude, being alone, vulnerability, feeling exposed and unprotected in a sense. It says, belonging so fully to yourself that you're willing to stand alone is a wilderness. Yes. Like an untamed, unpredictable place of solitude and searching. It is a place as dangerous as it is breathtaking. Listen to the paradox. It is a place as dangerous as it is breathtaking.
How about that?
A place as sought after as it is feared.
Yes.
The wilderness can often feel unholy because we can't control it. Or what people think about our choice of whether to venture into that vastness or not. But it turns out to be the place of true belonging. And it's the bravest and most sacred place you will ever stand.
So good.
The special courage it takes to experience true belonging is not just about braving the wilderness. It's about becoming the wilderness. It's about breaking down the walls, abandoning our ideological bunkers, and living from our wild heart rather than our weary hurt.
Weary hurt.
I didn't like that answer. I didn't want the wilderness to be that, right? But there's so much truth in it. The paradox of standing alone to belong. It doesn't even make sense, but my authenticity is what attracts belonging. It's what makes me fit. It's what makes me have something to offer to your life.
Oh, that's so good.
Right? But if I don't brave the wilderness, then I'm never authentic and I never have anything to offer. And so while I'm trying to just fit, I'm doing you a disservice.
And you're dying.
Because I'm not showing up.
And you're dying in the
offering
wilderness.
me, I'm dying.
You are dying in the wilderness.
I love her.
And the Bible shows that not everybody comes out of the wilderness. Let me tell you something. Your success is not guaranteed. You have to, everyone will have a wilderness experience. And quite honestly, it's as simple as this. It will either make you or break you. So how will you, and this is, I just believe that this is one of the, there are some things that I sifted through because her ideology and mine are not exactly, the same on some things. This is a great blueprint of how to respond to you in the wilderness. In addition to your word, because your word is your blueprint. However, I believe in reference materials, and this is a great reference material.
If we go to page 151, she asked someone to describe the wilderness.
Yes.
And these are the words of the person that she interviewed. She said, I won't sugarcoat this. Standing on the precipice of the wilderness is bone chilling.
Yes.
Because belonging is so primal, so necessary. The threat of losing your tribe or going alone feels so terrifying as to keep most of us distanced from the wilderness our whole lives. Human approval is one of our most treasured idols.
Yes.
And the offering we must lay at its hungry feet is keeping others comfortable.
Yes.
I'm convinced that discomfort is the great deterrent of our generation.
True.
Protecting the status quo against our internal convictions is obviously a luxury of the privileged because the underdogs and outliers and marginalized have no choice but to experience the daily wilderness.
Yes.
But choosing the wily outpost over the security of the city gates takes a true act of courage. The first step will take your breath away. Marcy mentioned when she talked about the overview, she said, I love how she puts words to emotions. And when I'm telling you, I'm reading this going, that's exactly how it feels.
That's exactly.
I didn't know anybody else could go through it like that, but it's beautiful. And it continues, but that's just a brief description of the wilderness.
That's very good. D?
It's interesting, as Mika was talking, the thing that I kept thinking of is break down to break out. And so often the treasures that are within us require us to be broke down because we have to unplug and unwire all the things that we've been taught or trained that is competing with the intrinsic nature of who we was intended to be. And until you do that inner work, and so often we want to read about the inner work but don't want to do the work.
Absolutely.
And until you get into, and God is a master of putting us in situations and corners that forces us to run into ourselves.
That is
And we don't realize that we're running into the part of us that got to break out in order to experience the liberty that we're so desperate seeking.
That's good. And it's very vital, like Marcy's talked about pain and the pain that you experience in life or in the wilderness, that you surround yourself with people that will push the best in you out. Don't ever allow someone that keeps you in a place that you don't ever see growth or you don't ever experience. There's nothing greater than helping somebody else become who they were born to be. It's not about self gratification. It's all about walking out the plan of God. When you help somebody else walk out the plan of God, they are one step closer to heaven. And that has to feel good. Bishop said something a couple of weeks ago. He said, our problems have made us a savior. Our problems have made us an answer. The things that we've been through created an answer in us in order to help somebody else out. But that only happens when you own your truth. If you don't know who you are, you cannot direct somebody else to become their true, authentic selves. So you owning you is necessary.
But you often say to be the answer. And so often we want to be qualified for what we haven't gone through.
Oh my Lord.
And
True.
we want hello. And
It's in the book.
It is. But the truth of it, but you hit the truth on the nail in that in order to be an effective tribe member, you must first know how to be a tribe player. And that
Yes.
comes with first being in touch with yourself. And so often we're trying to rescue someone out of our own unresolved brokenness, and we end up causing more injury because we don't understand how to connect properly because we don't understand what we are there to offer
That's
in our
good.
connection.
That is the truth. Charmy.
And I feel like a lot of people are after self-preservation. So nobody wants to say, well, this is what I had to go through to get here. Nobody wants to be exposed. Nobody wants to be raw. They want you to think that they just got here because they are everything. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to say, no, I had to struggle some nights. I have 3 kids and I had to go without shoes for myself to make sure they ate. You know, some nights we had the lights off and candles on. You know what I'm saying? But nobody wants to share the deep and real and honest truth about what it is that they've been through to be an answer.
And what you're saying is so right, because the depth, that's where the oil is. That's where God gets the glory. And while we are self-preserving, we're also stealing the glory.
Yeah.
When you don't talk about God bringing you out, when you don't give his name, when you don't give him the credit, you're stealing the glory, and you stifle your growth by not honoring God for bringing you. Like, look, you have to acknowledge God. You are not bringing yourself. You are not. And so when you don't share your testimony, when you don't share the depth of it, like, that's where the oil is. It's like, do you want shallow medicine or do you want what's going to heal immediately? Like, honestly, the thing that will probably help us the quickest, that's what we run from. Because it's going to cost you. It is because of the cost. I mean, she talks about that.
And this is what I experience. I actually do. And I actually hear a lot about the painful parts. I hear a lot about, I didn't have to feed my kids, and this is what I went through. But what you don't hear about is my choices, my accountability that led up to that. So you hear about the result, but you don't hear about the choices that I made, because that means that you have to take accountability for your actions. You have to own up for your choices. And oftentimes we don't want to do that. We want to blame the devil. We want to blame our parents. We want to blame the people that broke our heart. But actually, it's the things that you chose. And it's our choices that we don't talk about loudly.
Oh, your choices. Bishop said last night, your choices will make you hate your life.
What?
Oh my Lord.
He said that.
Yeah, Bishop needs to go.
I got $5 for you.
Take that $5.
I'm telling
He said that last night.
choices. Yes, lady, right
There's
there.
levels to this. It is levels to this thing. From believing to knowing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Shalonda.
Yes. So, are we still in the same chapter?
Yeah, wait 1 second. Hattie, you read the book. Come around the corner and share one of these points out of the book that stood out to you.
Okay. Look at all this highlighted.
She read it and she has notes.
Come on here, Hattie.
I really love I really like this book. I can't find probably won't be able to find it, but I did write my summation of the entire book, and this is what I came up with. It says, it's being comfortable in change, standing firm and unmovable in pain, accepting the way it presents itself. Be courageous. Your wilderness is where you discover you. You don't control how it happens, when it happened, who gets left, who appears. It's out of your control, but it's all about you. I really appreciate this, her entire writing, because it's just about conquering fear and learning that it's out of your control, but your best you is after this. It's outside of this. It's out of comfortability. It's out of being comfortable. So
Come on, make up a word. Come on, come on.
yeah, comfortability. There we go. So yeah, this is a great book. I'm gonna give you back my book. There you go. That's you.
Yeah.
Think about this. Think about how crafty we are, right? Yes. We've even learned how to manipulate the wilderness.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
You know, you said something. You said something in your writing. You said something about control. We want to control and how the pain comes. That's what you said. So, okay, I'm willing to take this much pain because we're seasoned now. We know we have to go through something, but I'm only willing to go through that. Thus far, no further. That's how we've learned how to manipulate even the wilderness. It's just like. No.
We use the wilderness for attention.
We do.
So I'm here, but it's not because I want to genuinely engage my wilderness. Mm-hmm. It's because I need the attention because I don't truly belong anywhere.
Right. Well, and it's what we've been hearing through our bishop change. And look, you need to look for the wilderness at this point and choose the wilderness. And I think this is about everybody's saying it, but it's about choice. Look, let me just choose change, choose growth, choose the path that will get me to my well done. Yeah. And I don't know. Look, when you say that, you might get anything.
Just know I've been through my wilderness and I ain't going back no more. I'm on the other side of it. I'm not going back. I've been through it. And I live to tell my story. Shalonda.
So back to what we all talking about, the wilderness, on page 37 and on page 40. She goes, to brave the wilderness and become the wilderness, you must learn how to trust others and trust ourselves.
Yes.
And she says, we want true belonging, but it takes tremendous courage to knowingly walk into hard moments. And you have to be knowing that the wilderness is here. It takes courage to stay in that wilderness, because what we don't like is the hard times. But the true story is the wilderness is what saves your life. Yes. Because without it, you wouldn't have had those lessons. You wouldn't know how to be as strong as you are. So the wilderness moments, it saves your life. And how you combat the wilderness or survive the wilderness is learning how to be true to who you are. And on page 40, she talks about true belonging, and she defines it in such a way that makes it so that you can really get it. Like Marcy said, she gives emotions to words. She says true belonging is a spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can only share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. And then she goes on page 41. She says true belonging is not something that you negotiate externally. It's what you carry in your heart. Mm-hmm. It's finding the sacredness in being a part of something and embracing the wilderness alone. Mm-hmm. When we reach this place, even momentarily, we belong everywhere and nowhere. This seems absurd, but it's true. And it goes back to what Maya was talking about. And the last line she says, but as Maya Angelou tells us, the price is high, but the reward is great.
That's so
when
good.
You know you've lived your true self.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It will cost you something. You'll lose friends, relationships. Yes. People will walk away from you, and you with money, everything. You know what I mean? It does cost you something, but at the end, if I can stand up and say, I am me, and it's a cycle. Like, I am me. I am becoming. I am still being, and I will become who I am. Mm-hmm. It's the process. It doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So I think that sense of true belonging and belonging to self, that you have to come to that self-actualization, what is that? actualization that, yes, I can't get my words right today.
Good.
But that once you come to that point where you understand who you are and you're true to yourself and your authentic self, that reward, that's great. So
The wilderness prepares you for your promise.
It does.
This is preparation time.
yeah.
This really is. And it depends on how you come out, how you go through, how long you stay in.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
You actually control whether or not it's a lifelong process or it's just a piece of a piece of your life. Don't let it be a lifelong process. Get it now. Get it quick. Learn quick. I always I forget who says this. They say it often. Fail fast so you can recover and move on.
Yeah.
Yes. On opening up chapter 4, he says it's called "People Are Hard to Hate." Close up, move in. That's the chapter we all loved. But I love the quote by James Baldwin.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain.
Yeah. Forced to deal with it.
Let me tell you something. Hate is such a strong emotion. It numbs the stuff that you don't want to address.
You have nothing to cling to.
Like, what? It is on page 65. It goes on to say, it is not easy to hate people close up. And when we are in pain, didn't we read this?
Yeah.
We did read this?
No, we didn't actually.
Okay. And when we are in pain and fear, anger and hate are our go-to emotions.
Right.
Almost everyone I've interviewed or known will tell you that it's easier to be pissed off than it is to be hurt or scared, and that is the truth. That's the truth. And she also, we read page 66. It's just, pain is a number. It's a pacifier. I think a lot of you say it. And we are coming from a church background. A lot of people hold pain as a crutch because it's attention seeking and it allows us to be in a safe place that we can recognize and relate to. Coming on the other side of that pain requires a part of you that you've never been, and it's so scary. However, you are doing the service the kingdom a disservice if that's how you choose to stay in life. You can give God so much glory, healed, whole, and loud and vocal. And our ultimate goal is, how can I give God the most glory out of my life?
But I wanted you to read on.
Okay.
Because here she talks about the fact that you have to transition from anger and turn it into a life-giving emotion.
At the bottom of page 67. And it's critical to recognize maintaining any level of rage, anger, or contempt. That favorite concoction of a little anger and a little disgust over a long period of time is not sustainable. Anger is a catalyst. Holding on to it will make us exhausted and sick. Living proof, you already know this. Internalizing anger will take away our joy and spirit. Externalizing anger will make us less effective in our attempts to create change and forge connection. It's an emotion that we need to transform into something life-giving. Courage, love, change, compassion, justice. Or sometimes anger can mask a far more difficult emotion like grief, regret, or shame, and we need to use it to dig into what we're really feeling. Either way, anger is a powerful catalyst, but a life-sucking companion. I'm going to say that one more time. Anger is a powerful catalyst, but a life-sucking companion. It will suck the life right out of you.
But one of the most powerful things that she says after this is the story she tells.
Yes. Look, wait, we both found the story.
Yes.
Like,
I wanted us to read it.
And I'll read it very quickly. On Friday night, you stole the life of an exceptional being, the love of my life, the mother of my son, but you will not have my hate. And this is one of the fathers who had lost a child in the Paris attacks.
He lost his wife.
He said, I don't know who you are, and I don't want to know. You are dead souls. If that God for whom you blindly killed made us in his image, every bullet in my wife's body will have been a wound in his heart. So no, I will not give you the satisfaction of hating you. That is not what you want. But to respond to your hate with anger would be to yield to the same ignorance that made you what you are. You want me to be scared, to see my fellow citizens through suspicious eyes, to sacrifice my freedom for security, you have failed. I will not change. And he closes with this. There are only two of us, my son and myself, but we are stronger than all the armies of the world. Anyway, I don't have any more time to waste on you, as I must go see Melville, who is awakening from his nap. He is only 17 months old. He will eat his snack as he does every day. Then he will play as we do every day. And all his life, this little boy will defy you by being happy and free, because you will not have either of us hate you. Oh my God.
Listen, I will deny you the satisfaction of hating
I
you.
will deny you the satisfaction of hating you. Now that's a strength that I have.
That's strength.
Let me tell you something. That's unheard of strength.
Yeah.
And she says on page 69, courage is forged in pain,
Yes.
but not in all pain. Pain that is denied or ignored becomes fear and hate. Anger that is never transformed becomes resentment and bitterness. She just killed this whole chapter right here.
It was so good. It's so good. And it's when you see the so many people dying that's never died before.
Yeah.
And the things that they're dying of, it's like, what is it? Is it a common denominator? Are we holding on to anger and bitterness, and is it producing a sickness that's taking us out in rapid numbers?
Yes.
If that's what it is, be free.
Yeah.
Dying is a choice if that's the case, and I refuse to die. I command myself to live at whatever it takes. Woo!
And let's not underestimate, right? The pain is real. This man had lost his wife.
Yes.
And his words were, "You will not have my hate because my hate will consume me." Right?
Yes,
On
Lord.
page,
It will change you.
it will destroy your life.
It will destroy
It's
your
life
life.
threatening. And so if you're listening, brave your wilderness. It's hard. Your pain is real, but you can do it. So we talked about how she backs everything up in research. It says starvation and on page 55.
That was good.
On 55, she says, and hear it because your pain has promise buried in it. It says starvation and loneliness are equally life-threatening.
Yes.
Let me share the study that really brought all of this together for me. In a meta-analysis of studies on loneliness, researchers Julianne Holt Lundstad, Timothy B. Smith, and J. Bradley Layton found the following. Living with air pollution increases your odds of dying early by 5%.
Yes.
Living with obesity, 20%. Excessive drinking, 30%. And living with loneliness, it increases our odds of dying early by 45%.
45%.
I ain't dying.
And loneliness and alone are not the same thing. Are not the same. That is the truth. I recall when we did a book by Bishop Rudolph McKissick, we did that book about friends. I don't recall the name.
Friends with benefits.
Friends with benefits, yes. And I did a research on talking about men and male relationships. And I was surprised to know that most men die so early because at a certain age they stop making friends. If they're not friends that they grew up with or been connected with, they no longer have the capacity, men, this is this research, to go out and create new friends and new connections. Therefore, men live shorter lifespans than women because they don't have that human connection that women have. And I thought, wow, and this is another part of that research that makes that true. Go out and get some friends, y'all. Some real friends. Not opportunists.
And not the one she was talking about in the book. She was talking about when you have those connections that you make with people, and when you connect with them based upon a mutual dislike for someone, that's not a true friendship.
Not a true friendship.
And that connection will not last. You know what I mean? Let's be very clear about that.
D.
I was looking at her definition of loneliness because I think we misapply what it truly is. And on page 52, she says it. She said, loneliness is perceived as social isolation. We experience loneliness when we feel disconnected. Maybe we have been pushed to the outside of a group that we are valued, or maybe we're lacking a sense of true belonging. At the heart of loneliness is the absence of meaningful social interaction, an intimate relationship, friendship, family gathering, or even community or work group connections.
So good. Yes. Marcy.
All right, so we jumped around. Let's see. Oh, well, so we were talking about, there's something on page 59, and I just highlighted, a couple of, and she went into talking about fear got us here, right? So I'm gonna just start at the top. The data that emerged from the research on true belonging can start to connect some of the dots around why we're sorted but lonely, and perhaps contribute new insights. Okay. So she said, we have to step out from behind the barricades of self-preservation and brave the wild. And she says, huddle behind the bunkers, we don't have to worry about being vulnerable or braving or trusting. We just have to toe the party line. Except doing that is not working. Ideological bunkers protect us from everything except loneliness and disconnection. And this is the part. In other words, we're not protected from the worst heartbreaks of all. And so you think that you are being you think you're guarding and you're protecting yourself, but you're not keeping yourself from the worst hurt. And she says, we have to find our way back to one another or fear wins.
Wow. Yeah.
Choose courage over comfort. I'm just jumping down.
Yeah, I highlighted all those. That's good.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this. I said, where did we learn that comfort was okay? Like I tried to go back to, kids are innocent and they're free, but you learn fear from a place. You learn. Bishop said it last night. We in the lullabies we teach our kids to fear failure, or we teach them about failure. I mean, it's just rap. I was like, but I wrote that. I said, where did we learn that comfort was okay? Like, where did I learn that? Where did I learn settling or not acknowledging emotion or being in denial? Like I don't know if that's innate. You picked that up from somewhere. And so I just wrote that. But
another part on that page was very good. It's the last paragraph. And it reads, high lonesome can be a beautiful and powerful place if we can own our pain and share it instead of inflicting pain on others. Yes. And if we can find a way to feel hurt rather than spread hurt, we can change. I believe in a world where we can make and share art and words that will help us find our way back to one another. And it is so true. That is so true. Tashia?
All right, I'm going to go back to 53. When she was talking about on the outside looking in and about the loneliness and how it's perceived as social isolation. And at the bottom of page 53, she says, whether we know it or not, our brains and our biology have been shaped to favor this outcome. Of course, we're social species. That's why connection matters. It's why shame is so painful and debilitating. It's why we're wired for belonging.
Yes, so good. Yes. Charmy.
Yes. All right, here we go. Give me one quick second. I'm gonna give me one quick second. I'm sorry.
Back to what Tashia was saying about that connection. She says on page 130, we are wired for connection. But the key is that in any given moment of it, it has to be real.
Has to be real.
Real.
Yeah,
Connections matter.
it really does.
Can we talk about Viola Davis?
'Cause that was my next one.
Can we talk about Viola Davis?
I mean, she just keeps going on my voice today.
I did.
Oh, go ahead. 86 to 87.
85.
It starts at 85. Yeah.
85. In this chapter, she's talking about the courage to just brave your own wilderness in the face of pain, and be vulnerable in the face of fear. Living and loving close up leads to true belonging. And so on page 85, she's speaking with Viola Davis and asking her to share insights on her practices for true belonging. And Viola says this. Dr. Brown asked Viola, when you belong to yourself, there is always going to be criticism. What's your experience with that? Viola replied, acting culture can be brutal. The notes can simply say, not attractive enough, too old, too dark-skinned, not skinny enough. They tell you to develop a thick skin so things don't get to you. What they don't tell you is that your thick skin will keep everything from getting out too. Love, intimacy, vulnerability, the things that matter most in life. I don't want that. Thick skin doesn't work anymore. I want to be transparent and translucent. For that to work, I don't own other people's shortcomings and criticisms. I won't put what you say about me on my load. I went down to
read that next line.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a more poignant example of someone who was able to recognize her pain, own her story, and write a new ending that includes transforming her pain into compassion for others.
So good. That is so good.
And I like how she concludes and says, this is who I am. This is where I'm from. This is my mess. This is what it means to me to belong to myself. Like she summed that thing up.
Look, let me see. She said, I will not be a mystery to my daughter.
Yeah.
I will not be a mystery to my kids. I will not be a mystery to my husband. I mean, they said it earlier in the book. It gives them space to create their own stories. How can you live in the same house with somebody and not know who they are?
You will know me.
Oh my goodness.
So good. Look, all of you. She said this. There's an unspoken message that the only stories worth telling are the stories that end up in history books. That is not true. Every story matters.
Yes.
Every story matters. And look, what disservice do you do by only telling the good parts? We that's a disservice to whoever you're called to, your family, your community, your jobs. You can't just tell the good part. There's no help in that.
And she says this, we are all worthy of telling our stories and having them heard.
Yep.
We all need to be seen and honored in the same way that we all need to breathe.
Yes.
It is necessary.
And then she says that she lives her life by those rules. I am doing the best that I can. I will allow myself to be seen. And I apply the advice an acting coach gave me to all aspects of my life. Go further. Don't be afraid. Put it all out there. Don't leave anything on the floor.
Those are words to live by. Go further.
Come on, Sharmy.
No.
Go further.
Go further now.
She's so crazy.
So look, y'all gotta give me time.
Sharmy, go to page 155. I know that you saw something under Wild Heart.
Y'all gonna skip around that.
Read enough.
Go to Wild.
I don't think Hattie read enough.
Read that first.
She didn't read far enough.
Sharmy, read that first paragraph.
I wish there was a secret handshake for the Wild Heart Club. I love that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I want the payoff for braving the wilderness to be some kind of ritual or symbol that says, I'm part of this Wild Heart Club. I know what it means to stand alone and brave the criticism, fear, and hurt. I know the freedom of belonging everywhere and nowhere at all. The reward is great. But believe me, when Maya Angelou said the price is high, she was not kidding. I have made this quest and I have the scars to prove it. What's the saying? Your scars say
Your scars remind you that
your pain was real, and that you survived.
And that I survived.
And that you survived.
Yes.
Let me just say, and that you survived.
Woo, and I live to tell my story.
That's something there.
Yes. Tashia.
Are we gonna stick to the back?
No, you can go wherever you want.
Are we gonna skip around the part where I thought that she might have been a little frustrated in 5? Did everybody get that?
What part?
Speak the truth to your BS.
Oh, I love that chapter.
It was, yeah, she was on it. I was sensing a little anger there, and she was a little frustrated, but it was a very, very good chapter.
She cussed.
Let me
Yes.
say something.
She cussed throughout the whole book. She said BS throughout the whole
Throughout
book.
the book.
She would drop a word.
I mean, she said bullshit throughout the whole book. He said say it. Don't you say it.
I knew they were going to act out on this.
It's in the book. It's in the book.
Bishop
She
is
wrote it.
watching.
But look, this is her authentic self.
I
And
love
you can,
it.
I mean, you can just appreciate it. And she said, you know, when she gets speaking engagements and they say, well, look, you can't curse.
Don't
She's
say
like,
this.
look, it's a part of who I am. I pray and I curse.
Right,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Or
This is true.
she's gotten engagements where they said you can't use faith. You can't talk about spirituality. Talk about courage. Don't put it in the realm of spirituality. And she's like, no, I pray and I curse. This is who I am.
Yes.
Oh, who you are, Dr. Brene.
This is good. We were asked, the Woman's Voice was asked to host an event, and after this, ladies, we're gonna start wrapping up because the hour has surpassed us, and it's almost that time.
We was in the first 2 chapters for
The whole
an
book.
hour.
Let me tell you something. This is how good the book is. We barely got past page 100. I mean, this book is great. But a Woman's Voice was asked to host an event, and we are a Christian-based organization. We own Jesus everywhere we go because it had not been for him, we would not be here. And so the organization told me that we could not say Jesus on our platform, and everywhere I go, I give him the glory. I canceled that event so fast because I will never disown the one who brought me. I have to be true to who I am and whose I am, and that's not even an option. And as a matter of fact, I don't even go to any of their events. They are the hottest events that happen when they come into the DMV, but because I know this is what you believe and this is what you practice, I won't even attend any more of your events. Not ever.
Deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. Yes. So we're going to just, ladies, begin our wrap up for the day. It has been phenomenal. If you're joining us, thank you for joining us. We're gonna just surmise the morning together. Tell me, ladies, let's start with how you felt about the morning and your wrap up sentiments about Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. We'll start with you, Tashia.
All right. My takeaway from the book is definitely in 2 parts. I wish that she would have named some of the interviews, but because I was just being nosy, I'm like, I wonder who she was talking to when she was when she said that. But most importantly, I grasped that as difficult as it may seem, as scary, exhausting, challenging, that life can be owning and trying to find your own path, it will be rewarding. There is a cost, but the reward is greater.
Yes. Marcy.
So overall, I think the book was a great reminder that God can't bless who you pretend to be.
Yes.
Be who
That's
you
good.
are. Look, some of where we are is because he can't find us because we are not showing up who he created us to be.
Yes.
Just be who you are.
That's it. Yes. Charmy.
So I feel like our morning was great, and that I love listening to how everyone takes what they take from the book. I love when we come together and we're able to put all of our thoughts, opinions, ideas down, and collectively we provide answers. I love that. And so if I had to leave anything with everyone from the book, I would say people are hard to hate close up. Move in. Speak truth to BS. Be civil. Hold hands with strangers. Strong back, soft front, wild heart.
That's good. D.
You are worthy of belonging.
Amen.
You truly are. And she gives the tools to do so.
Amen. Tamika.
Reflections on the book. I appreciated the language being given to the walk that I find myself on, right? And the closing in the last chapter on page 158 simply encourages us to stop walking through the world looking for confirmation that you don't belong. You will always find it because you've made that your mission. Stop scouring people's faces for evidence that you're not enough. You will always find it because you've made that your goal. True belonging and self-worth are not goods. We don't negotiate their value with the world. The truth about who we are lives in our heart. Our call to courage is to protect our wild heart against constant evaluation, especially our own. No one belongs here more than you.
That's good.
And I'll finish what Tamika was saying on that same page. It says it's not easy to stop looking for confirmation that we don't belong or that we're not enough. And on the next page over, she says this, and this is what I took away from it. Belonging is being somewhere where you want to be and they want you. Fitting in is being somewhere where you want to be, but they don't care one way or the other. Belonging is being accepted for you. Fitting in is being accepted for being like everyone else. If I get to be me, I belong. If I have to be like you, I fit in.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with being your true, authentic self. The price, what does Maya say? The price is great, but the reward, the price is high, but the reward is great.
Yes.
You know, so when you tap into who you really are, you have all the tools to survive the wilderness, but you have to be you. You belong to you and own yourself.
Yes, that's good. The Bible says that when it's your time and he says to you, depart from me, I never knew you. Don't let that be the sentiments of your life. I enjoyed this read because it helps you own who you are. It helps you not to be a carbon copy. And it's one of those books that should be a constant reminder of how you tap into you and you become the you that you were created to be. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. Every fiber of your being is individual to you. Will you own your individuality? It is necessary. On page 162, I'll surmise the book. It says, our world needs you to show up and stand up for our beliefs. At a time where the world is looking for identity because they don't know how to define their own. This is when it's those of us who've journeyed the road of self-discovery need to be the loudest. We need people to direct their paths to who they were designed to be, not who they desire to be, but who they were carved out in this world to be and to produce what they were designed to produce. I just challenge each and every one of you to add Braving the Wilderness to your library. I told my ladies who thank you, they are some of the greatest and smartest women to ever walk this earth. Can we give them a round of applause? Yes. They offer fruit. They offer a fresh word. They offer their authentic selves at a time where most of us are on a road of rediscovery because life hasn't gone the way that we thought that it would, and God has finally gotten all of our attentions and redirected our paths. And on the road of rediscovery, there's a lot that takes place, and to be vulnerable on a path that you've never seen before it takes courage. And ladies, I thank you for your courage. Showing up is something that I can never pay you for, but God sees all. Thank you so much. Again, we'll be back here on Saturday, September the 29th, discussing a personal literary work called Inspired by Love. We invite you to join us. There'll be many ways for you to purchase this read, starting with the September 8th book launch. I hope that you can make it from 1 to 4. It's going to be great. And I'll leave with you these words because the sentiments of my heart this week have been balanced. In all areas of your life, be sure to find balance. I don't want anyone who hears the sound of my voice to go after, to feed the hunger of success, but starve the relationships around them. God needs you in your success. Your husband needs you in your success. Your kids need you in your success. Don't obtain part of the promise. Go for it all.
Great word.
And until we see you again, thank you, and may God bless you richly.